Hello everyone and welcome back to Hell Yeah Gaming's Let's Make a Fighting Game! The show where I build my own fighting game from the ground up! I'm your professional protagonist and today we are spotlighting two more characters, but first we have to name our subscriber of the day! Riho Not Here has that honor today, and if you want to be just like him, then all you need to do is 1. Be subscribed, and make sure that your privacy settings are turned off so that I can see you're a subscriber. And 2, leave comments on any and all of my videos and community posts. With that out of the way, let's deep dive into the next two fighters of Quantum Combat! I've been looking forward to these two characters for quite a while, so I'm very excited that you voted for them. As a brief reminder, yes you the audience, get to vote on which characters get showcased in the next episode, so stick around until the end to see your options and give your votes. As for the two characters for today, there's not really anything I can say that applies to both of them. These two are about as different from one another as you can possibly be. I guess when you were relying on popular vote, you can't always expect things to come out as clean and thematic as they did last time with our two supernatural spooky fighters. Then again, that might actually be the common thread between these two. Both of them are determined to make things work out for them despite all the hardship in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, today it's a battle of young and old, magic and mundane, but persecuted are they both. We will begin with the legendary Mystic Fox of Northtown, Jimmy Hogarth.
I'm just a regular guy. I don't know how far I'm going to get with this, but even a regular guy like me knows that as long as I can fight, I can't just let you have your own way. Terry Bogard, 991.
Right out of the gate, Jimmy is the character that I knew I would be making before any other. No question about it. He's basically a one big love letter to my all-time favorite fighting game character, Terry Bogard. For those of you not in the know, Terry is the flagship character for SNK, the main protagonist of the Fatal Fury franchise, as well as appearing in every single installment of King of Fighters. When I was growing up, most other kids were playing Street Fighter II or the latest Mortal Kombat as their household fighting game of choice, whereas I was pretty much stuck with the original Fatal Fury, a still popular, albeit lesser known title. The main difference was that, at the time, most other fighting games had no plot whatsoever to speak of. And if there was a story, it was just the bare minimum to justify why these characters were together, fighting and beating the snot out of each other in the first place. But not Fatal Fury. From day one, this is a franchise that always wanted to put its story up front and center as the main focus, and treat it like an action movie as it progresses. Between every fight, you'd have a short cutscene updating you on the progress of the story as Terry fights his way through Geese Howard's goons to get closer to the man who killed his father, until you finally face him down himself in a climactic final battle that's been built up through the whole game. And more than that, Fatal Fury really lets you know and understand the characters as actual everyday people. Sure, Blue Mary may be a badass motorcyclist private detective, but she also likes to hang with her friends at the Pow Pow Cafe. And you just don't get that sort of personal intimacy with most other fighting games. It's because of this method of storytelling that I came to use Terry Bogard as the main source of inspiration to design Jimmy Hogarth. There are many aspects that are one-to-one parallels between the two, while others are total opposites and others subverting expectations that you may have for somebody inspired by Terry. So I'll give you a moment to familiarize yourself with him before I get started, and you can make a game for yourself out of all of the different references that you can recognize. Go ahead, pause the video. I'll be here when you get back. I'll wait. Get educated on Terry. All good? Alright, then let's jump into Jimmy Hogarth. Jimmy was born in Northtown, Canada on December 21st, 1945, and orphaned at a young age due to street violence motivated by racism. rather than be put into the foster system, which would no doubt treat him cruelly as a black child. Jimmy opted to make it out on his own on the streets. Despite these hardships, Jimmy never let it blacken his heart, and actually grew up to be a rather cool and chill, friendly dude. He spent much of his time at the local youth and rec center, playing hockey, swimming, basketball, and connecting with others. As he grew, Jimmy developed a reputation for being very reliable. If you needed someone to talk you down from using after a long sober period, you called Jimmy. If you needed help moving a couch, you called Jimmy. If you wanted to host a barbecue and needed a second hand, you called Jimmy. If a street gang moved in demanding protection money or else, you called Jimmy. Yes, just because Jimmy grew up to be a very kind, caring, and reliable person did not mean that he grew up to be soft. The streets were still the streets, and he grew up with the skills needed to survive. And that included becoming an accomplished street fighter to fend off whole gangs by himself. He was something of a fighting prodigy, tossed into a trial by fire and came out of it with flying colors. Though in his case it was more of a trial by ice, as he soon learned how to manifest his own spiritual life energy, or ki or chi, into his attacks and formed them into an icy chill. Soon thugs and criminals from all around learned to stay the hell away from Northtown. That's Jimmy Hogarth's territory, they'd say. Don't cause trouble there if you don't want an early grave. Well, that is until one day someone did decide to cause trouble. A kingpin in the criminal underworld known as Grizzly was looking to expand shop and set up in Northtown, and he brought a whole slew of enforcers with him. These weren't your typical street thugs, gangs, and bullies. These were trained killers with decades of training and the backing of a wealthy tyrant. Almost overnight, Northtown fell under Grizzly's thumb, and it seemed that there was nothing anyone could do about it. One night, there was a knock on Jimmy's door, which quickly became a pounding, and then the door was blasted off its hinges. A squad of enforcers was sent to Jimmy to make an example of him, even though he hadn't actually done anything to them yet. It was just another tactic to pressure the locals into giving in by taking down their local protector, their main source of hope. They got more than they had bargained for, but it was no picnic for Jimmy either. After a long, hard-fought battle that left Jimmy's apartment burning to the ground, he had defeated the enforcers. From that moment on, it was Jimmy's personal mission to dismantle Grizzly's operations. One by one, he struck down key enforcers, operators, and business sites to take them down. Each was a hard-fought battle. Each one could have resulted in his death, but he took those experiences and learned from them, becoming a better fighter with each one. Finally, enough was enough, and Grizzly knew that he would have to take on the hero of Northtown personally. Grizzly was an accomplished wrestler, so he extended an invitation to Jimmy to face him down in a caged death match. Turn it down, and all of Northtown will burn. With an offer that he couldn't refuse, Jimmy turned up to face on Grizzly in exactly what was advertised: an arena housing an underground cage match. What resulted was a fierce battle the likes of which the people of Northtown and the people in Grizzly's operations had never seen before. Through clever tactics and maneuvering, Jimmy won the bout. Those who saw it compared it to a clever fox outwitting a larger predator, and thus nicknamed him the legendary Mystic Fox. Though Grizzly was beaten and on the verge of death, Jimmy did not deliver the final blow. The crime boss demanded it, saying he didn't need Jimmy's pity, and his life was now forfeit. Jimmy picked up the larger man and said, "Chill out, man. It's just a fight. Are you okay?" And thus, with that act of kindness, Grizzly and his men were kicked out of Northtown. Jimmy fully expects them to be back for revenge at some point, but until then, everyone can just enjoy life. But before his adventures in Northtown can continue, Jimmy has one more adventure to take care of. In the sort of winner-take-all free-for-all that Cronus is running, Jimmy's inherent kindness could be a weakness to be exploited. Even his desire, the effect that he would have upon winning on the timeline, is just for the people of Northtown to prosper well into the future. However, his combat ability more than makes up for his soft attitude. Jimmy is a self-taught street fighter with a free-flowing style that incorporates some movements from sports like hockey and basketball, as well as dance into his movements and combos, and many of his strikes apply an icy effect to them. He's a decent all-rounder who applies the best pressure at close to mid-distance. Reflecting his ability to adapt to any opponent or style quickly, Jimmy's flux is Fox's cunning, which allows him to pinpoint the weakness in any opponent in order to quickly take them down. Mechanically speaking, this places a target mark on the opponent's body in a random spot. When the opponent takes hit to the marked spot, they take extra bonus damage. It's also useful for psychological warfare, as your opponent may be too busy guarding and protecting the spot that was marked that they don't see you coming at them from an alternative angle. Either way, you'll be manipulating your opponent into an advantageous position like a cunning fox. Which brings us to Jimmy's special moves. The first of these is called Slapshot, a technique developed from his love of hockey. Jimmy materializes a long stick of ice in his hand and swings it hard at another piece of ice on the ground, sending it forward as a projectile that starts low and rises up diagonally as it flies.
Get ready!
Jimmy's second special is a forward rush shoulder charge, in which he quickly freezes the floor below him to slide fast, striking at mid-height. If it connects, Jimmy can follow up with 2 more hits with the correct inputs. First, by punching with the hand opposite of his shoulder charge, then finishing with an uppercut from his other hand. This special is called Misconduct.
Time for the penalty box.
A third special is called Reverse Dunk and draws from street dancing. Jimmy flips backward, traveling a short distance, while performing something of a reverse axe kick, rotating in the air a full 360 degrees, so that his heel kicks upward and he still lands facing his original direction.
Let's kick back!
For his final special, Jimmy applies his diving skills by launching himself off an ice platform, upward at a slight angle, with his hands pressed together above his head. He curves back down until striking the ground, at which point he rolls back up onto his feet. And of course, his arms and upper torso are coated in an icy aura. This is his Arctic Dunk.
Too cold for you?
And that means it's time to transition into Jimmy's super moves! At level 1 of Super Meter, Jimmy begins with an excited smirk and rears up his fist, then slams it down hard into the ground. The impact results in a ball of spiked ice, forming in an explosion of sudden cold. Numerous ice spears forming at an upward diagonal angle in front of him, covering a mid-distance. This move is called Ice Geyser.
Are you ready for this?
Jimmy's level 2 super is the Cannon Fox. Jimmy charges up a punch and dashes forward a short distance. If the punch connects, then it releases an explosion of ice, shrapnel, and cold. And yes, this move is essentially the legendary Bust the Wolf in ice form.
Sorry, here comes the big one.
Which leaves Jimmy's final super, the level 3. It begins with him putting up the hood of his parka, then throwing his arms to opposite sides, palms out. This creates a short-range sphere around him, only affecting the immediate area for a brief instant. Any opponent caught in that area in that instant becomes flash frozen. On a successful hit, Jimmy begins unloading a lengthy combo into the frozen opponent, leading to an uppercut that knocks them up into the air, then ends by unleashing a nice geyser as they come back down. This super is called the Absolute Zero Chill.
Time to get serious. Blammo! Chill out.
And that covers everything for Jimmy Hogarth, the legendary Mystic Fox. But we're not done here today. We have one more character to cover, and he'd be most cross if I left him out. Mighty and powerful are his cosmic abilities. We now transition from a cool fighter to a lame one. Let's dive into Cosmico, the Lame Magus. Wait, I just realized how that came out. That just sounds wrong.
Disability need not be an obstacle to success. Dr. Stephen Hawking.
This next character was created to be the defining zoner of the roster, an archetype centered around staying as far away from your opponent as possible and spamming projectiles at them, or controlling the stage with certain attacks that force them into certain positions advantageous for you. More often than not, you don't want a zoner to be in your opponent's face. So I thought to myself, what sort of person in history, fictional or otherwise, would never want to be up close? Obviously, most cultures have some sort of archer, gunner, or other ranged specialist warriors, but they still receive some combat training for up close when things get dicey. And that's when I thought of a wizard or sorcerer type character. I'm sure we're all aware of the gaming stereotype of the squishy wizard who can rain hellfire upon his enemies, but must hide behind the heavily armored warrior for fear of being too close to the bad guys with pointy sticks. But I wanted to take this further. I wanted this character to be the very definition of a zoner. Someone who absolutely has to rely on their magic, while at the same time providing some representation for a group of people who are very often left out of media when representation matters the most for them. The disabled. So I had made my final decision. This would be a magic user bound to a wheelchair. With that determined, I recruited my friend Kieran, and they fleshed out from some details. And from there, I finalized the great and powerful wizard Cosmico, the Lame Magus, the son of a duke, great-grandson of a king, and the last descendant of two distantly related family lines, trying to keep their noble blood pure for several generations. Cosmico was born a bit wrong. The lazy eye condition, which was common to his family line, was particularly bad in his case, with his left eye turned so significantly to the outside that he lacked any depth perception, and would often have headaches from trying to focus his vision for any length of time. He was prone to chills and coughing sickness. His spine was only a little bit crooked, but his legs were twisted and mangled in the womb, leaving him unable to walk. His parents were simultaneously ashamed of what they had brought into the world, and at the same time obligated to care for him with all of the resources available due to him being of noble blood. He was raised in what most would have considered luxury, with nursemaids and servants doing, well, basically everything for him all the time. His arms worked just fine, but he was never allowed to so much as bathe by himself, for fear of slipping and drowning. He wasn't allowed to go out and play with other children who lived in or around the castle, so most of his time was spent in bed, reading through his one good eye. When his parents had visitors, he would be placed in a chair with his left side facing the wall and a blanket draped over his legs. His complete lack of independence was stifling an existence of frustration. So, as many do, especially children, he retreated to the one place of infinite possibilities, his own imagination, the one and only place he would always have total control. But unlike most others, he would find that his imagination held power beyond just his own mind. One night, when sitting up, pointing at the candles, he willed them to light. Anyone else would eventually grow tired of this game and simply stand up and go to light them by hand. But of course, that was not possible for him. He had nothing to do but focus on his little game. And so, to his surprise, the candles lit! It would not happen every time, but night after night, he'd get better and better, improving through practice and sheer desperation. Cosmico's family began to provide him with books on magic, regardless of their origin. From the concepts of Qi and Tao from the East, to the druidic practices of the North, and even the shamanic beliefs of the South in Africa. No form of magic was off limits to him, so long as it was available. The church would, of course, brand this as blasphemy and witchcraft if they were ever to discover it, but the family's noble status gave them some measure of plausible deniability. They attended church regularly, after all, were a pillar of the local community, and when asked, it was a simple matter to explain that in order to combat evil, one must first understand it, to recognize it, spot it out, and know its weaknesses. This excuse held. Over time, Cosmico's abilities and the magic arts grew. At first he could only create small effects, but moved on to enchanting objects, such as a small marble of light for reading. He enchanted a monocle to bend light for his lazy eye, a quill to write for him, and eventually his most important enchantment, his chair. His chair was now animated, able to walk about on its own accord, using its clawed legs, a mental extension of himself. This granted him far greater freedom and self-reliance than ever before. No more relying on servants to bring him materials or books from the shelves. He could do it all himself now. A few more years passed by. As his powers grew, so too did the resentment of magic. The church was beginning to send out witch hunters in a full-blown inquisition, the first of many to come. His family's plausible deniability would no longer hold any water to these extremists who sought to burn any books they found and slaughter those who held them. He took his books, materials, research, and most trusted servant and made a big show about leaving the city to exonerate his family. To sever any connections he had back to them, he took on his new name, Cosmico. Over the next few years, the two of them created a school for the practice of magic, which he placed under a complex illusion to have it appear as an ordinary boarding school to any of those who held disdain for magic in their hearts, while not affecting those who have a more kind outlook on the practice. From there, he would admit students after a simple test. Light the candles. Beyond this simple command, they were given no instructions. Those who could not force the candles to ignite themselves were deemed to not have the talent necessary, and thus not admitted. But a lack of skill was nothing to be ashamed of. They could retake the test at their leisure. Those who lit the candles by hand were not only not admitted, but blacklisted. To Cosmico, magic was an art form that requires as much hard work, dedication, and labor as any other. Those who lacked the patience to put in the work, or saw magic as a quick fix for their troubles, he held nothing but disdain. So there he continued for many decades more, ever the teacher and ever the student, for there was always more to learn, and always improvements to be made. His school became an underground beacon for the practitioners of magic. He sought to outlast humanity's ignorant and petty views, but instead found a new challenge before him. Kronos appeared before him and showed him the future, a future in which magic had all died out. The witch hunters had won, his own legacy erased. Worse still, people moved about in mechanical carriages powered by combustion, their lives catered to by convenient technologies that fostered laziness and self-indulgence. Nobody even knew how to maintain their own tools. They had all become a bunch of short-sighted consumers eager to throw away anything for the next model. Cosmico agreed to take part in the Time Arbiters tournament to ensure that magic would never die and people would not become so lazy. Well, as you can tell, Cosmico does not exactly have the highest opinion of modern society, and he may have a point or two. Despite his disabilities, few are capable of the level of dedication and hard work as he, which means that as a player, you will need to work hard to master his fighting style. Like I mentioned at the top of the character analysis, Cosmico is the epitome of a zoner. You do not want opponents to get in close by any means necessary. His health pool would be the smallest of the entire roster, second only to Amis, the vampire lady discussed in the previous episode, and his speed isn't anything to write home about either. He would have a couple short-range attacks, but they wouldn't combo well and would work best to temporarily stun an opponent to put some distance between you and them. Cosmico would move about the stage in his animated chair, which would even have a fun little animation of it tapping its legs impatiently if nothing is going on, with his most basic attacks being the chair itself taking some swipes with its clawed feet, along with some short-range spells. As Cosmico is a learned master of all forms of magic, it is only appropriate that his flux, Spellcraft, properly reflects the depths of his knowledge. At the bottom of the screen, Cosmico will have 3 blank orbs, and each time he uses one of his specials, one of those orbs will be marked with a sigil or rune, based on which special he used. Once all 3 are marked, pressing the Flux button will have Cosmico cast a spell based on the combination of special sigils that are in the marked 3 orbs. The order of the specials doesn't matter, just the composition. For example, inputting Special A, Special A, Special B will yield the same result as if you put Special A, Special B, Special A. The order doesn't matter, just the total number of each special in the combination. If you use more than 3 specials before activating Spellcraft, then the oldest one will be bumped off to make room for the newest one. With 4 specials and 3 sigil markings, that essentially means that Spellcraft is 20 different specials in one. Now, I haven't designed 20 specific Spellcraft Flux uses for this. That is a tremendous amount of work and also would require a lot of balancing and playtesting, so that's not something that I have even thought to tackle, but the concept is there and you can see how it would work. Since the specials are so important to his flux, I think it's time that we've manifested some of that magic. And what better way to start than the ever-present, always classic Fireball! Yes, Fireball, the eternal staple of wizards and fighting games everywhere. It's exactly what you would expect it to be. A single, mid-height projectile that flies across the screen.
Combust!
His second special is called Hail. It creates a large icicle above him near the top of the screen, which then travels downward at a diagonal angle, until it collides with the ground or your opponent. The angle does mean that it's impossible to hit the opponent if they are close enough to you, but it is his hardest hitting special.
Glaciate!
Cosmico's third special covers the most ground. Literally, a series of roots and thorny vines erupt from the ground in a wave that crosses the screen. The wave wouldn't be very long, and it reaches about mid-height. This special is called Veins.
Erupt nature.
And his final special is the quickest and likely the most annoying. He summons an electric shock from the atmosphere around the opponent for a quick electric jolt. It's the weakest of the specials, but both the fastest and most likely to inflict flinching to interrupt them. While it can strike from any position on screen, it can of course still be dodged, blocked, or interrupted. This move is called Discharge.
Does it tingle?
But of course, as important as the specials are to Cosmico's character, they are still mere paltry forms of magic. Mere prestidigitation compared to the main event. For some truly phenomenal cosmic power, we have to look into his super moves. His level 1 super would target a sizable portion of the ground about a mid-distance away from him. Cosmico snaps his fingers and points at the ground in that area, which transmutes into a sort of quicksand-like substance. An opponent that gets caught in it, well, they get stuck. And that's it. For a few solid seconds, the Cosmico player has free reign to spam and hit them with as many projectiles and long-distance attacks as they wish. And the opponent has to take it all and can't even block. Of course, if you get in close, then Cosmico will get stuck as well. But why would you ever get close? This super move is called Adhesion.
Lesson 1. Discipline.
His level 2 super is called Silence in the Library. This is a counter-type super, as activating it will have Cosmico throw up the Nordic rune symbol for protection, as a floating, glowing sigil. acting as a sort of force barrier. As he does this, the wizard will be idly reading a book without a care in the world, as if his opponent is beneath his notice. If the barrier isn't struck by the opponent, then it will last for a little under a second before it falls, and Cosmico will have some end lag animation which the opponent can then take advantage of punishing. However, if the barrier is struck, then it will explode with huge damage and knockback, sending the opponent to the far end of the screen. Well, Cosmico looks up from his book, looking rather annoyed at the interruption.
Lesson 2. Patience.
His third and final super will unleash the full fury of the wizard's knowledge and magic. It begins with a simple projectile, fast-moving, mid-height, all the way across the screen. If the opponent is struck by the beam, then the super continues as a cinematic, which temporarily switches to the opponent's point of view as everything begins growing bigger and bigger around them. Suddenly, Cosmico's chair leg stomps down in front of them, shaking the screen and jolting the camera back into regular position, as we see that the opponent has shrunk down to the size of a doll. They then slowly float up to the wizard's hand through some mystical telekinesis, as he slowly brings them toward his face. The light of his glowing eyes grows more intense and begins seeping out, surrounding the opponent until it takes up the entire screen. In that moment, the opponent takes massive damage, and the cinematic ends by fading back into normal view. Cosmico positioned where he was originally, and his opponent full-sized once again, prone about mid-distance away. This super move is called Lesson 3, Graduation.
You want the secrets of Cosmico? Then have them all.
And that does it, not just for Cosmico the Lame Magus, but also for Jimmy Hogarth, the legendary Mystic Fox. 2 more characters down, many more to go. As usual, you get to decide which characters show up in the next episode by voting down in the comments on which 2 you are most interested to see. Just as a heads up, Quantum Combat will be going on a hiatus for a while, until my primary artist opens up his commissions again. And hopefully I can save up more cash to pay for the art in the meantime. Wink wink, nudge nudge. Until then, I have a plethora of other original video game ideas that I've had cooking in the background, which you can see on screen now. So leave another comment telling me which one you'd be most interested to see. Until then, have an awesome day, and let's give these characters a great, big, hell yeah! It is rather inconvenient that this pistol I purchased from you has ceased to function. Once we've found refuge from this constabulary, we shall be addressing your faulty merchandise.
All Galatax manufactured firearms come equipped with a jamming signal in the event they are used by criminals. For example, thieves of Galatax property. By stealing me, your weapon has been disabled.
Oh, splendid! This way, brother! Very well then, let us breach into the unknown! That was a booster snatch, my brother. Oh, it takes some real balls to liberate a macaw like that. Good thing I was out for some O2, my dude, or that could have gone crash real fast. Yes, the fortune most certainly shined in my favor. I am greatly appreciative of your aid and asylum. It feels prudent to inquire, but will the constabulary not simply enter through the same portcullis as we? Aw, Dim Jam. You're really devoted to your whole ancient pirate thing, huh? I'm pretty into vintage culture myself. And don't worry about the coppers finding us. The door has got one booster camouflage job. And this whole place is sealed in a Faraday cage. No signals in or out. Totally impenetrable. I see. Capital. Most capital. Then I shall do as you request and make myself at home. Booster. I'm Algorithm. You can call me Al. Always good to meet another brother fighting the good fight. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Mr. Al. My name is Captain Richard Scott.
Legal identity. Bloody hurts.
I already informed you that was a misunderstanding. Please, Mr. Al sounds crash. Just Al. Very well then, Al. Booster. Hey, go ahead and hand me that macaw and I'll get to work on repurposing its AI and shutting down its tracking beacon. Oh, certainly. We would not want to leave its AI unpurposed. Booster, brother.
Warning. Tampering with Galatech property is a Class 7 offense. Punishable by...
There we go. Now I can work uninterrupted. So, Algorithm. Is this a common name amidst the populace of this city? Oh, you're not from around here? Well then, let Al be your guide, brother. Nah, I call myself Algorithm as a pseudonym. Gotta keep our real identities below the electric eye, right? Same with you and your funny pirate name. I assure you my name is... I chose Al because I'm really into those vintage movies right now. You ever hear of The Matrix? I can sincerely confess that I have not. Yeah, that's not surprising. Tons of media is hard to get a hold of right now. Not Galatech approved. Won't stop me, though. Looks like we're both pirates, right? Indeed. We are men cut from the same cloth. Damn right! We stick together and fight the good fight. Ah, there. Now this macaw unit just needs to reboot, and it'll be a brother too. I am loath to impose. However, you seem to be quite skilled in manners as these technologies, and my sidearm has been disabled. Might I request... Say no more, brother. I'll take care of the problem. I owe you a great debt, Al. It's all booster, brother. As long as we keep fighting the good fight. So, tell me, where's your cell at? Pardon? My cell? Yeah, your cell. You know, the group that you work with for our revolution. The crew that's got your back. Yes, Apologies. My crew is gone. We had limited lifeboats, and I got as many to safety as I could, then stayed behind myself. I have no way of knowing how many survived. Oh, crash. I am so sorry, Richard. My crew is gone too. Went topside for a mission and never came back. That was about a month ago, and I've been holding down the fort ever since. Then we have a shared experience. Right then, it appears to me that our journeys have brought us together for a purpose. Al, I beseech you now, inform me of all you can about this city. Huh? Why is that? I should think it to be self-evident. We shall be a crew.